Hey guys, tonight we slip into the sun-baked world of ancient Greece, a place where the gods meddle, villagers bicker over olives, and just occasionally, a donkey becomes the unexpected centerpiece of musical history. You're standing on a dusty hill overlooking a sleepy village nestled between olive groves and crumbling limestone ruins. The air smells like sheep warm bread and the faintest whiff of fermented grapes, classic small-town Aegean vibes. You hear cicadas buzzing lazily in the fig trees and catch the distant clink of amphorae being stacked in a wine cellar below. Somewhere in the distance, a shepherd yells at a goat, though it might also be a goat yelling back at shepherd. It's hard to tell with goats. You trudge toward the village, sandals kicking up powdery dust. It's festival season, which means music, wine, chaotic foot races, and occasional what are we doing here moment involving costume dogs or flaming torches that were definitely not approved by the local temple. What no one expects this year, least of all you, is a singing contest featuring farm animals. Now, you probably won't survive this as a modern vocal judge. There are no microphones, no auto-tune, and absolutely no Simon Cowell to make things interesting. There's just you, a few hundred very sweaty Greeks, and what might be the most awkwardly earnest donkey performance in ancient recorded memory. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and the local time. I always love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The village you've wandered into isn't one of the famous city-states like Athens or Sparta. This one's the sort of place that maps barely bother to label. A few dozen stone homes, one modest temple to Dionysus, god of wine and questionable choices, and a population deeply committed to whatever happens to distract them from chores, which at the moment is music. As you pass a modest agora, you notice something odd. There's a painted wooden sign depicting what you think is a lyre, but it's floppy. Maybe it's a donkey's ear. Beneath it, a hastily daubed message in red ochre reads, "Festival of Voices, all welcome." And yes, that all includes a four-legged and feathered. You glance around. A child is trying to wrap a piece of seaweed around a chicken's head, murmuring, "It's for acoustics." A very bored ox chews rhythmically on a tambourine. You're starting to get the sense this festival is less organized religious rite and more drunken committee decision that spiraled out of hand. Historians still argue whether animal contests like these were common or just festival-specific one-offs. Some point to satirical plays and pottery, depicting performing animals as cultural hints. Others suggest they were exaggerated tales, the kind that age into legend over a few too many goblets of wine. But you're here now, right at the starting line. You pass a group of musicians, one of whom is very seriously tuning a double-pipe aulos, while also trying to pet a mildly annoyed tortoise. Suddenly, a loud bray cuts through the air, so loud that pigeons take off from the temple roof in a flurry of flapping wings and indignant cooing. You turn toward the sound and spot him, the donkey. He stands at the edge of the square like he owns it, dusty gray, ears at full alert, and looking as though he just dared someone to challenge him to a vocal duel. His handler, an older man with a tunic stained purple from grape juice and what might be regret, pats him on the flank and mutters, "That's the one, all right." And somehow, you know he's right. This isn't just any donkey. This is a donkey who brays with purpose, with volume, with range, maybe even with ambition. The moment stretches a beat too long. A nearby priest rolls his eyes. "Dionysus, forgive us," he says under his breath. "We're letting barn animals join the choir now." The donkey brays again, 2 octaves higher. A cat falls off a wall. You're starting to believe, not in miracles necessarily, but definitely in the possibility of something extremely weird going down at this festival. And with that, your journey with the world's most melodious donkey begins. There will be missteps, misunderstandings, and a whole lot of braying. But for now, let the dust settle, the sun sink low, and the music, such as it is, begin. You follow the commotion toward a crooked little stall near the edge of the square, where the donkey has now planted himself, basking in the stunned attention of everyone who heard that unusually operatic bray. His handler, the old man in the grape-stained tunic, is attempting to shoo away a cluster of small children who are insisting the donkey sing the loud part again. You slide in beside them and get a closer look. This donkey is, frankly, not much to look at. His coat is patchy in places. His hooves are badly in need of filing, and one of his ears has a permanent tilt, like it once lost an argument with a fig branch. And yet, something about him radiates a certain stubborn charisma, like he knows he's not the best singer here, but he's willing to outvolume every competitor and bray until someone gives him a prize or passes out. The man beside him sighs deeply, looking up at the bright Aegean sky, as if regretting several decades of life choices. "Name's Telamon," he mutters, sensing your curiosity. The donkey's name is, well, technically it's Steadfast Perseverance, but everyone just calls him Brontes, because of the noise. You arch an eyebrow. Brontes means thunder. This donkey is named after thunder, and honestly, after hearing that last vocal explosion, it checks out. Telamon strokes his gray beard, which is braided in two neat plaits, possibly for airflow, possibly for flair, and continues. "He weren't always this loud, you know. He used to be a pretty normal creature. Then he ate half a panpipe someone dropped at last year's festival. Ever since then, it's like something clicked, or maybe broke." You're not sure if he's joking, but the idea of a donkey achieving musical enlightenment via indigestion is oddly poetic. As Telamon grumbles about Brontes eating his sandals for rhythm practice, you notice that several villagers have taken to reenacting the bray, with mixed success. One man tries to hit the high note, and ends up coughing loudly into a jug of wine. Another insists the donkey hit a minor third clean, though you suspect he doesn't know what that means. Even the local priest is paying attention now, squinting over from the steps of the temple. He's holding a scroll that likely contains the original schedule for the festival, minus the musical donkey, but he doesn't intervene, probably weighing his options. Intervene and anger Dionysus, or let the talking point of the year unfold, weirdness and all? Meanwhile, Brontes snorts and swings his head dramatically, as though preparing for his next act. He eyes a tambourine left on the ground and steps on it by accident. It gives a half-hearted jingle, which Brontes immediately interprets as encouragement. He brays again. The tambourine trembles. A baby starts crying. A parrot 2 stalls over begins mimicking the bray, creating a bizarre call and response effect. "Historians still argue," Telamon says as he scratches under Brontes' chin, "whether the gods ever truly care about these village games. Whether they watched, whether they judged. But if they were watching now," he nods solemnly, "they'd probably be laughing." You can't help but agree. In a culture obsessed with order, temple rituals, crop rotations, exact measurements for sacrificial wine, this kind of chaos feels wonderfully human. And ancient Greece, for all its columns and tragedies, was full of moments like this. Strange little ruptures in seriousness, when the ordinary pushed its way into myth. You sit on a crooked bench made of sun-bleached wood and listen as Brontes begins experimenting with lower notes. They sound like the world's saddest tuba. A little girl claps politely. A man in the back mutters, "It's still better than last year's lyre solo." Even now, there's an energy building, part anticipation, part disbelief. The donkey has become something between a village meme and a folk hero. And the festival hasn't even started yet. You lean back, watching Brontes sway gently to a beat only he can hear. Telamon lights a little oil lamp, even though it's not quite dusk, and hums what might be a hymn or might be a lullaby. The square smells like fried onions and old sandals. And for a moment, you forget how utterly weird it is that you're emotionally invested in a donkey's singing career. But don't worry, it's only going to get weirder. It's the next morning, and the sun is already baking the cracked tiles of the village roofs in that unforgiving way only a Mediterranean summer can. You wake up, or more accurately, you sit up from the woven mat you borrowed from a very confused but accommodating olive farmer, and you hear it. Music. Sort of. You follow the sound past a row of lazy cats and a stack of amphorae that now feature a crude chalk drawing of what might be a donkey wearing a crown. Villagers are gathered around a notice nailed to a fig tree. It's written in both careful Ionic Greek and what can only be described as festival gibberish. The Festival of Voices, in honor of Dionysus, god of revels, wine, unclear rules, and musical surprises. Contestants may include humans, birds, donkeys, and beings willing to hum on command. You scan the rest. Time, after the third sun loaf. Location, where the pomegranates bloom or just near the temple. Judges, whoever doesn't faint from laughter. The locals are taking it all extremely seriously. One man is attempting to warm up his cow by singing at her from very close range. The cow looks like she'd rather discuss philosophy. A group of teenage boys has trained their dog to bark in rhythm to clapping. You think it might actually be working, and then you see the stage. Calling it a stage is generous. It's a slightly elevated platform made of wine crates and someone's stolen front door. At the back, a frayed curtain hangs on a rope, swaying in the breeze like it knows it has no business being here. Someone has set up a stool carved from a tree stump and stuck olive branches into the sides. The effect is rustic. As you move closer, a short man in a toga with more stains and dignity sidles up beside you. "You heard about the new rule?" he whispers dramatically, as if revealing state secrets. Animals get one helper, for moral support, or backup vocals. You blink. Backup vocals? He nods solemnly. Last year a goat sang with a farmer. It was unforgettable, mostly because the goat bit someone mid-chorus. You thank him and turn just in time to see Telamon arrive with Brontes in tow. The donkey is wearing what might be a cape, or possibly just Telamon's old sleeping robe tied loosely around his shoulders. He looks regal, in a disgruntled barnyard monarch sort of way. The crowd parts slightly, half out of respect and half to avoid the possibility of being brayed at from close range. Telamon seems both proud and mortified. He's been practicing. He says to no one in particular. He's got a new tone. Less screech, more tremble. You hear the bray. It's somewhere between a dramatic sigh and a ship's horn. An elderly woman in the crowd tears up and whispers, "That note touched my bones." Clearly, the villagers are ready, or delirious. It's hard to tell. Historians still argue. You overhear a local scholar say as he fans himself with a leaf, whether these festivals were originally meant to mock sacred music or elevate it through parody. Either way, it appears we've landed on something beyond both. As the priest of Dionysus arrives, robe sparkling, slightly wine-stained, and flanked by 2 temple geese, you sense that things are about to become officially ridiculous. He holds up a bronze bell and announces, "Let the Festival of Voices begin. May your offerings be tuneful, your notes intentional, and your animals relatively cooperative." The first contestant is a chicken accompanied by a child with a small flute. The chicken appears to be asleep. The child touches the flute, misses every note, and still receives polite applause. Next up is a rooster named Kyrios. His handler claps a rhythm, and Kyrios belts out a single glorious crow. The audience cheers wildly. Someone throws an olive. Kyrios looks pleased. Then a sheep is brought on stage. It bleats once, gets distracted by a patch of moss, and wanders off. The handler shrugs and takes a bow. But it's the parrot who truly commands attention. Bedecked in gold beads and muttering what sounds suspiciously like curse words, the parrot perches confidently on a branch and belts out an oddly convincing version of a Dionysian. There's even a key change. You're not sure if the parrot means ironically or not. Either way, he earns a standing ovation from 3 philosophers and a wine merchant. You can feel it in the air. The crowd is giddy, sun-dazzled, and prime for absurdity. And Brontes, dear thunder-voiced donkey, is waiting in the wings, or more accurately, tied to a fig tree behind a curtain and munching on dried apricots. His moment is coming. But for now, you sit back in the shade, fanning yourself with a scroll menu of festival snacks, and wonder, will this donkey actually sing? Or will the whole thing collapse into dusty chaos? Either way, you'll be there to hear it. You find yourself lingering near the back of the festival square, where the sun has softened into a drowsy gold and the shadows of olive branches stretch long across the cracked flagstones. The air is thick with anticipation, and also the unmistakable scent of something fried. A vendor walks by holding a tray of festival figs, which appear to be stuffed with cheese and slightly regret. You munch one anyway. Salty, squishy, surprisingly good. Ahead of you, the crowd has begun to shift and shuffle again. More animals are arriving, accompanied by humans who look various degrees of optimistic and doomed. A pig wearing a garland of daisies squeals enthusiastically. A goose in sandals honks in tight rhythm. Someone is genuinely trying to choreograph a moth. But it's what's happening offstage that really draws your attention. Behind the curtain, which is now being supported with a broomstick and divine hope, Telamon is deep in what appears to be a passionate motivational speech. You sneak closer. "No, Brontes," he says firmly, pointing at a broken lyre. "You are not allowed to eat this one. That's a loner. We've talked about this." Brontes, standing on a tangle of reeds and what might once have been a tambourine, huffs and tosses his head dramatically. He kicks one hoof against the ground, like a diva rehearsing a difficult number. Telamon groans. "Fine, we'll start from the top." And then it happens. The donkey begins to bray. But this isn't the full volume, ear-splitting thunder you heard yesterday. This is something new. A low, sustained note, rising gently into a wavering bleat that almost carries a melody. It bends around a familiar tune. A hymn to Apollo, maybe? No, wait, Dionysus. Definitely Dionysus. The melody is a little off-key, a little off-kilter, but undeniably musical. Telamon watches with a strange mixture of awe and terror. "He's improvising," he whispers. "He's never improvised." You watch, transfixed, as Brontes leans into the sound. His ears twitch in concentration. His nostrils flare. He's no nightingale, but he's definitely trying. And, weirdly, succeeding, at least by donkey standards. Nearby, a flutist stops mid-practice to listen. A temple assistant holding a cup of honeyed wine frowns, then nods slowly. Even the goose pauses, one sandal halfway off. Historians still argue. A sleepy scholar murmurs behind you. Whether animal performances were ever truly judged for merit or simply tolerated for the joy of absurdity. But if that donkey finishes a whole verse, we may need to revisit the canon. Training, it turns out, has not been particularly structured. Telamon confesses this over a plate of pickled olives. Most I just bray at him and hope he brays back, he shrugs. Sometimes I sing a bit. It's more of a shared journey. You learn that the donkey responds to certain sounds. Flute trills read flapping the word barley. And when Telamon hums the opening phrase of the festival's main hymn, Brontes answers. Not accurately, but consistently. There's rhythm. There's intent. There's a sort of shared persistence. You lean against a low wall, watching the other contestants prepare. The rooster is practicing his posture. The parrot is glaring at everyone, as if daring them to forget his high note. But Brontes is simply breathing. In, out, head up, eyes dreamy. He doesn't know the stakes. He doesn't care about the prize, a modest laurel crown, and a year's worth of barley from a village storehouse. He just likes to make noise, to express, to be noticed. Telamon, meanwhile, seems half convinced the donkey has been possessed by a minor muse. Maybe one of the lesser ones, he mutters, like Calliope's distant cousin, the patron of weird talent shows. The rehearsal continues. Brontes tries again, this time with a slight sway. Telamon hums alongside him, off-pitch and proud. A child peeks around the curtain and gasps. "Mama," she whispers, "the donkey has a song." You feel something shift. This is no longer just a gimmick. The villagers are beginning to believe, or at least suspend disbelief long enough to enjoy the madness. And as the sun begins to dip behind the hills, casting the whole festival in golden, sleepy hues, Brontes lets out one final note. It warbles, cracks slightly, but ends in a surprisingly graceful hush. The square falls quiet. Then someone claps. Then another, and another, and then the parrot, furious, squawks. Well, this is just insulting, and flies off stage in a flurry of beads. You smile. Tomorrow is performance day, and whether Brontes wins or not, he's already done the impossible. He's rehearsed, and sounded almost good. You wake up early the next morning to the sound of distant tambourines, and a rooster who clearly thinks he's already won. The sky is a soft lavender, and the stones of the village are still cool beneath your feet as you make your way back to the square. Today's the big day, the official performance. You pass Telamon on the way. He's hunched over a breakfast plate of figs and olives, nervously fidgeting with a flower crown made of slightly wilted marigolds. Brontes is nearby, standing perfectly still except for the occasional twitch of an ear. There's a calmness to him. Or maybe it's just donkey indifference. It's always hard to tell. Big day, Telamon says, wiping his hands on his tunic. You'd think I was the one singing. He gestures toward Brontes. He's been quiet all morning. Too quiet. You offer supportive nod and a piece of bread. Telamon takes it and chews thoughtfully. I've done my part, he says. Now we leave it to fate, the gods, and that donkey's curious interpretation of pitch. By the time you reach the square, it's been transformed. The stage has been shored up with actual planks. The curtain has been replaced by an embroidered cloth that might be a table runner, and someone strung up wildflowers and grapevines like it's a sacred wedding and or a mildly cursed picnic. Villagers crowd in with baskets, cushions, and the kind of festival energy that comes from too much fermented honey. You find a shady spot near a column and settle in. The rooster is first. He struts confidently onto the stage, tail feathers fluffed, and his handler claps out a rhythm. Kyrios belts a loud, perfectly timed crow. Then another, then pauses dramatically, probably for effect, possibly because he forgot the routine. A solid performance. The crowd claps appreciatively, and the rooster bows with all the dignity of a Roman senator. Next, the parrot, clearly still bitter about yesterday's applause. He launches into a full-scale vocal odyssey. He mimics the temple priest, imitates a flute solo, then mutters what sounds like a sarcastic bravo at his own performance. The crowd goes wild. The priest frowns but says nothing. And then, at long last, it's Brontes' turn. You feel a strange tension ripple through the square. Telamon steps out first, holding his walking stick like a conductor's baton. He clears his throat. Honored villagers, esteemed guests, confused livestock, I present to you Brontes, son of no particular lineage, friend of melody, defender of the mid-brave vibrato. A smattering of giggles. Brontes enters. He moves slowly, deliberately, one hoof at a time, until he stands center stage, bathed in the soft light of late morning sun, and whatever cosmic absurdity has brought him here. He looks at the crowd. The crowd looks back. And then he brays. It begins low, like a grumble of protest. Then it rises, shakily, awkwardly, but with unmistakable determination. Telamon hums softly beside him, guiding the tune. And suddenly, the crowd quiets. The bray wobbles into something that sounds almost like the first line of the Dionysian hymn. It holds, then cracks slightly, then resumes with even more commitment. Brontes rocks side to side, as if carried by the sound. Telamon claps once, gently, and the donkey answers with another note, higher this time. Not beautiful exactly, but intentional. The priest leans forward. A group of musicians stops tuning. Even the goat judge lowers his ceremonial leaf. Historians still argue, someone whispers behind you, whether this was divine inspiration, trained mimicry, or mass hallucination brought on by sunstroke and too much feta. But you're not thinking about scholarly debates right now. You're watching a donkey sing, sort of to a festival crowd who absolutely didn't expect this and absolutely loves it. He finishes with a bray so long it echoes off the temple wall. The silence that follows is stunned. And then it breaks. Applause, whistles, laughter. Someone throws a laurel wreath, which lands squarely on Brontes' head. He doesn't flinch. He chews it. Telamon bows. Brontes bows too, or maybe just gets distracted by something on the ground. It doesn't matter. They've won the moment, and you, seated under that warm sun, realize you just witnessed something gloriously ridiculous and somehow oddly moving. The rooster looks furious. The parrot starts rehearsing. But Brontes? Brontes just stands there, crowned in leaves and chewing with quiet triumph. The square is still buzzing when you follow Telamon and Brontes offstage. Villagers are animatedly discussing the performance, as if they've just witnessed a celestial event or a particularly dramatic goat wedding. You hear phrases like, "Did you hear that modulation?" and "I swear he hit the fourth note," the real fourth note. A few skeptics grumble, of course. One man insists that Brontes must have had something stuck in his throat, and that wasn't singing, it was survival. Another claims he heard the donkey whisper secrets to the wind before the performance, but no one takes him seriously, because he also thinks olives are a form of currency. To be fair, in some parts of Greece, they sort of were. You trail Brontes and Telamon back to their little tent, a patchwork structure of worn cloth, broken crates, and half a cartwheel acting as a door hinge. Telamon flops down on a rug, pouring himself what can only be described as a celebratory gulp of wine. Brontes, true to his nature, immediately begins chewing on the rug's corner. "Can't believe it," Telamon mutters, shaking his head. "He did it. He actually did it." You nod, still slightly stunned yourself. "How'd you even train him?" Telamon snorts. "Train him? You don't train a donkey. You negotiate with him. Maybe plead, maybe bribe. Mostly you just try not to take it personally when he sits down and refuses to acknowledge your existence for 4 hours. You smile, and Telamon continues. But there was something in him, some spark. Maybe it was the panpipe accident. Maybe it was the time he fell into the amphora pit. Or maybe he looks up, squinting toward the temple. Maybe Dionysus just wanted to laugh this year. The idea isn't so far-fetched. In ancient Greek culture, Dionysus wasn't just a god of wine and revelry. He also presided over theater, improvisation, and glorious nonsense. Many scholars believe the earliest roots of drama were born in festivals held in his name. It's not so wild to imagine that in this dusty little village, on this slightly unhinged afternoon, the spirit of Dionysus might have had a front row seat. Outside, Brontes has gathered an impromptu audience. A group of kids are feeding him figs and encouraging him to bray again. He obliges, but only after dramatic hesitation. He's playing the crowd now. Historians still argue. You overhear someone say behind a fig cart, if that donkey had true talent or if the humans just projected meaning onto him because they were desperate for joy. You consider that. Projected or not, joy is still joy. And the villagers are clearly feeling it. They're reenacting performance with wildly inaccurate brays, composing songs about Brontes, and trying to decide if he should lead the evening procession instead of the high priest. The high priest, for the record, looks mildly horrified at the idea. You return to the tent later that evening. Telamon is lying back, hands folded across his stomach, humming softly. "You know," he says, "I used to want to be a singer, thought maybe I'd travel to Athens, join a chorus, be somebody." He shrugs. "But I stayed, made cheese, raised goats. Then this one came along." He nods at Brontes, who is now using a bucket as a pillow. "And here I am, coach to the most famous donkey in the region." You both laugh softly. The fire crackles. Crickets begin their night song. You lie back on the dry grass, arms tucked behind your head, eyes on the fading stars. It's ridiculous. A singing donkey. A village swept up in festival madness. And yet, here you are, feeling oddly peaceful. Like you wandered into a folk tale that never quite made it into the official myth books, but still matters, somehow. You drift half asleep, listening as Brontes lets out one soft bray in the dark. A final encore. Morning arrives with a lazy sun, and the sound of someone trying to tune a harp with a stick. You stretch, feeling the familiar stiffness of sleeping on patchy ground, and stumble out toward the square, where preparations for the festival's final ceremony are well underway. Garlands are being tied to anything that doesn't move. Goats are wearing decorative sashes, and the smell of roasted barley fills the air. Today is a day of feasting, of awards, and traditionally a lot of vague, unverified storytelling. In other words, it's a historian's nightmare and a villager's favorite pastime. Telamon is pacing near the temple steps, nervously straightening his robe. Brontes stands beside him, freshly brushed and wearing what you now realize is a cape stitched together from 2 tunics and what might once have been a curtain. He looks regal, in the way only an animal who doesn't understand ceremony ever can. "They're going to call the names soon," Telamon mutters, tugging at his beard. "Not that it matters." He already won. Just would be nice if someone besides a rooster got the silver olive leaf. You nod, though part of you wonders what exactly winning means here. There was no rubric, no judging panel with numbered paddles. Just a wildly entertained crowd, and a parrot still sulking in a cypress tree. A hush falls as the priest of Dionysus takes center stage. His robe today is suspiciously clean, and his hair is braided with what looks like grape stems. His voice booms across the square. Citizens of melody, animals of dubious musicality, and visiting strangers from who knows where, we have gathered, celebrated, and indeed witnessed some very creative interpretations of harmony. Polite laughter ripples through the crowd. He continues. Some sang in tune, some sang in time. One sang while chewing, but all sang from the heart. There's cheering. Someone yells, "Long live Brontes," and someone else yells, "What about the parrot?" which is met with boos. The parrot glares from the tree. The priest raises a hand. In recognition of extraordinary effort, the laurel crown of Dionysus shall go to... He draws out the paws. Brontes the donkey and a companion Telamon, the presumably willing musician. The crowd erupts. You feel the energy swell, half joy, half disbelief. A few people scream with laughter. The rooster attempts to crow over the noise. The parrot mutters something unprintable. Brontes lets out a bray that nearly knocks a fig off its branch. Telamon, blinking rapidly, steps forward to accept the prize. The crown is made of actual laurel leaves, and also, confusingly, a small sprig of mint. It's placed gently onto Brontes' head, though he immediately tries to eat it. Historians still argue, someone behind you whispers, whether this crown was symbolic of true victory, or just a polite way to end the contest without offending the goose delegation. You can't tell if that's a joke. The celebration spills outward. People are dancing. Instruments are played with great enthusiasm and little accuracy. A man is juggling pomegranates, badly, and at the center of it all, Brontes walks proudly through the square, trailing his cape like a seasoned festival king. He is offered barley. He accepts. He is offered wine. Telamon declines on his behalf. He is approached by a man with an offer to tour other villages, which Telamon brushes off with a scoff. He doesn't sing for fame, he says. He sings because he must. Later, as the sun begins to sink behind the hills again, Telamon sits beside you, holding the crown on his lap. "Never thought I'd be the guy," he murmurs. "You know, that guy, the one with the donkey everyone talks about. I thought I'd be forgotten. Just another bearded man yelling at sheep." You nudge him lightly. "But now you're a legend." He chuckles, briefly, a small, strange legend. You glance at Brontes, who's fallen asleep near the stage, softly snoring into a basket of fruit. Brief or not, today, that donkey was royalty, a braying, off-key, heart-of-gold musical monarch. And in this sunlit, slightly wine-soaked village, that's all anyone could ever ask for. By morning, the village is quieter, not silent. There's always a clatter of sandals and the occasional goat yelling existential thoughts. But there's a softness now, the kind of hush that follows a very loud, very joyful chaos. You stretch, your back creaking like the floorboards of a particularly emotional amphitheater, and wander toward a fig grove just beyond the temple walls. Telamon is already there, sitting cross-legged in the dirt with a bowl of apricots and a face that says, "I'm processing something big, but also I might just be hungry." Brontes is beside him, chewing on a stick. Not for food, just vibes. Big day yesterday. Telamon says without looking at you. You nod. He did it. He sighs. Yes, he did. And now he thinks he's famous. You look over at the donkey, who's currently trying to kick a pile of leaves into what might be a nest or a throne. Hard to say. A pair of local artisans walk by with measuring rods and a blank slab of marble. One of them gestures toward Brontes and asks, "Do you think the ears should be life-sized?" The other nods solemnly. Apparently, a commemorative carving is in the works. Word has spread. People from neighboring villages have begun to arrive. Not for trade or family visits, but to see the donkey, the one who sang, or at least tried to. Rumors have taken flight. Some say he sang in full harmony with a lyre. Others claim he invoked the spirit of Orpheus. One woman swears he ended the performance with a backflip. He did not. You watch as two young travelers nervously approach Brontes with a piece of papyrus and a stick of charcoal. They ask Telamon if they can take a hoof print for posterity. Brontes steps on the paper, then promptly eats the charcoal. Telamon sighs. Fame changes a donkey. Historians still argue, says a passing scholar sipping diluted wine, whether Brontes represents a commentary on hubris or merely the randomness of glory. Some see him as a symbol. Others see him as a donkey. You see him as both. Later that day, Brontes is asked to perform again. It starts informally. A group of musicians begins to play near the well. Someone calls out, "Encore," and a cheer rises from the crowd. Telamon looks skeptical but agrees. One more bray, he mutters, "Then we're going back to normal life." Only Brontes doesn't bray. He walks to the stage, looks at the crowd, and stands there, silent. A breeze rustles the grapevines. Someone coughs. Someone else whispers. He's building suspense. But nothing happens. Brontes just stares. A child plays a note on a flute. No reaction. The parrot, still bitter, squawks from a tree. "Your time is over, darling." Still nothing. It's not stage fright. No, you can feel it. Brontes is making a choice. A firm, donkey-brained refusal. Telamon frowns. He's done. You lean in. What do you mean? He won once. Telamon says, that's enough for him. Now he's moved on. He's an artist, not a circus act. You blink. He's eating his own stage. Exactly. The crowd eventually disperses, murmuring disappointedly, but not angrily. If anything, the legend grows stronger. Now there's mystery. Why won't he sing again? Did he lose the spark? Did Dionysus reclaim his gift? Or is he simply above it all now? Telamon shrugs. Or maybe he's just bored. You sit together as the last light fades. Brontes settles down near his cart, utterly unbothered by the speculation swirling around him. Once more he's just a donkey, who brayed. Once. Brilliantly. Briefly. The days pass, and the legend only grows. By the fifth morning, the village square features 3 new stalls. One selling miniature carved donkeys with exaggerated open mouths. One offering scrolls claiming to teach your livestock the musical secrets of Brontes, and one rather entrepreneurial boy charging 2 obols to see the exact stone where the donkey stood and contemplate a harmony. You check, it's just a rock. Telamon, for his part, has become a reluctant local celebrity. People come to him asking for interviews, blessing requests, and very specific advice on animal motivation. You just have to understand your donkey's emotional palate, he says gravely, while holding back a sneeze from olive pollen. Brontes, meanwhile, continues to ignore everyone. He has developed a fondness for laying in the sun and occasionally biting the temple fence. Not out of rebellion, it seems, but boredom. And yet, the memory of his performance lingers. The villagers have taken to reenacting it. Poorly. Children bray with wild abandon. One old man has composed a dramatic ballad about the day of the divine donkey, and a group of teenagers build a puppet theater where a straw donkey achieves enlightenment through tragic melody. It's delightful. It's also getting out of hand. Historians still argue. A merchant tells you as he sketches a donkey onto a ceramic plate. Whether this event marked a turning point in rural festival culture or just revealed how dangerously low our standards for entertainment were after a long drought. You're not sure, but you do know one thing. This donkey, silent as he remains, is now a cultural moment. And then something shifts. You're standing near the olive press when a whisper moves through the market like a breeze through reeds. He's singing again. You drop the olive you were about to sample and follow the murmur. But when you arrive at the square, there's only Telamon, holding a half-eaten carrot and looking vaguely irritated. He sneezed, Telamon explains. It just sounded melodic. You look at Brontes. He yawns. It's tonal. Almost. The crowd has gathered nonetheless, buzzing with speculative energy. It was the same key as before, someone insists. He's returning to the stage. Another cries. Telamon waves him off. No, no stage. He's retired. But you can feel the momentum building again, not just in the crowd, but in Brontes himself. He's standing taller. His ears are twitching like antennae tuned to the hum of expectation. He steps forward, lifts his head toward the clouds, and lets out a short, raspy, unremarkable bray. It is not musical. It is not divine. It is simply donkey, and yet the crowd erupts, because now it's not about the notes. It's about the moment, the presence, the unpredictable power of a creature that, for one brief festival afternoon, was a star. Telamon turns to you and sighs. He's not coming back. Not really, but I suppose that doesn't matter. He's right, because legends aren't about consistency. They're about flashes of brilliance that echo long after the sound has faded. And Brontes, without ever fully understanding what he's done, has become immortal in the minds of these people. You look up at the temple roof. Someone has painted a small figure, a donkey with wings, ascending toward the stars. It's deeply inaccurate. It's also perfect. Night falls gently over the village, as though the stars themselves are pausing to listen. You sit beneath a fig tree, watching as festival lanterns flicker one by one, like sleepy eyes closing, content with the day. Somewhere nearby, someone's still singing. Not well, not in tune, but it's earnest, and that counts for something around here. Brontes is lying in the grass, his laurel crown hanging loosely from one ear like a forgotten accessory. Telamon sits beside him, whittling what might be a flute, or might just be a stick he pretending is a flute, so he has something to do with his hands. He's a stubborn thing, Telamon mutters. Always has been. Even when he was just a foal, he wouldn't walk in a straight line unless you bribed him with fermented apples. You smile, and now he won't sing unless it's for an existential cause. Exactly. Telamon flicks a shaving of bark into the dirt. He's moved beyond performance. He's become thematic. The two of you sit in companionable silence, watching as a few late-night revelers stagger home, carrying what appears to be a basket of pastries and a statue head, hopefully unrelated. And then you hear it, a sound like thunder, but small, personal, and deeply nasal. Brontes is braying in his sleep. It's soft, dreamy, almost delicate, like he's remembering the stage, or perhaps composing a lullaby only donkeys understand. Telamon listens for a moment, then hums along, completely off-key, but smiling the whole time. Historians still argue, Telamon says suddenly, whether dreams influence animal behavior, or whether humans just invented those theories to explain things they didn't understand. You nod. Same thing, sometimes. The next day, something strange happens. A group of pilgrims arrives from a neighboring coastal town. They carry scrolls, instruments, offerings. One of them wears a tunic printed with tiny donkeys. They've come, they say, to learn from the master. One of them explains reverently. Telamon raises an eyebrow. The master, Brontes, at that exact moment, knocks over a basket of turnips and sits down on them like a throne. The pilgrims kneel, and just like that, the donkey becomes a teacher. You watch in mild disbelief as Telamon leads an impromptu lesson on vocal inspiration, complete with interpretive braying and musical reenactments. The pilgrims take notes, actual notes. One of them sketches a diagram of Brontes' nostrils, claiming it's a secret to his resonance. You turn to Telamon during a break. What are you doing? He shrugs. I didn't start the cult. I'm just trying to keep it educational. To be fair, Greek villages have embraced stranger things. Sacred cats, prophetic fish, and at least one lettuce that supposedly whispered lottery numbers. A braying prophet isn't the worst of them. Soon, others arrive. A pair of flute makers hoping for inspiration. A traveling bar with a twisted ankle who insists that hearing Brontes once healed her elbow. A philosopher claiming that the donkey's bray contained a lost syllable of an ancient, forgotten language. Telamon handles it all with dry bemusement. If this goes on, I'll have to charge tuition. You spend the evening watching Brontes teach nothing, learn nothing, and do absolutely nothing, yet somehow remain the focus of every eye in the square. People interpret his every movement. A tail flick becomes a punctuation mark. A sneeze is a dramatic pause. A prolonged yawn, a metaphor for society's exhaustion with structured performance. Brontes, for his part, just wants a nap. But in his silence, he has become something more than a performer. He has become a blank canvas, a vessel for meaning. And you, too, find yourself wondering if maybe, just maybe he knows, or maybe he's just tired. By the following week, things have escalated in precisely the way you suspected they might. There's now a festival mural, half-finished, vibrantly colored, and a little bit lopsided, depicting Brontes mid-bray, rearing dramatically against a swirling backdrop of musical notes and improbable sunbeams. A young artist explains that the scene represents the tension between divinity and domesticity. You refrain from pointing out that Brontes was very much just asking for barley at the time. Telamon stares at the mural for a long time before muttering, "I don't remember him levitating." You spend the morning wandering the village, observing what can only be described as post-legend ripple effects. The baker now names his loaves after bray pitches. There's high A sourdough and minor flat rye. The fishmonger offers a donkey duet discount. If you sing while placing your order, you don't. You still get the discount. The only one not caught up in enthusiasm is Brontes himself. You find him behind the temple, lying on his side beneath a fig tree, breathing slowly, peacefully. There's a gentle hum in the air, not music exactly, but the low drone of midday, when even time takes a nap. His ears twitch in his sleep, chasing invisible dreams. Telamon joins you and sits heavily beside the donkey. He's tired. You glance at him. Tired from performing? No, Telamon says. Tired from being a symbol. It's not hard to understand. The attention, the interpretations, the mural that may or may not depict him as part of the celestial choir. It's a lot, especially for a creature that still doesn't understand why people laugh when he chews in rhythm. Historians still argue, Telamon adds, whether festivals like these existed more for catharsis or distraction. Joy, after all, is a type of forgetting. You look around. A few villagers are still rehearsing the hymn Brontes almost sang. They argue over pitch. Someone insists that the original version had a donkey-shaped flute solo. Another insists it was more of a rhythmic stomp. Truth is, no one agrees. The performance has grown fuzzier in collective memory. The notes less clear. The story more embellished. There are now 3 separate tavern songs inspired by the event. One suggests Brontes learned to sing after staring into a sacred puddle. Another claims he was once human, cursed to become a donkey until he could hit a perfect fifth. You listen to the tavern band rehearse in the square. Their chorus, "Bray for me, Brontes, bard of beasts," is catchy if wildly inaccurate. The goat judge has been invited to join the temple council. The parrot is allegedly negotiating a tour. And Brontes? He's done. Telamon confirms it later that night, over a bowl of soup, and what he insists is a farewell loaf. He's finished with performances, he says. From now on, he'll eat, walk, sleep, and occasionally kick things, like a proper donkey. You sip the soup. It tastes like time, barley, and the end of an era. There's something bittersweet about it all. Brontes didn't ask for fame. He didn't crave attention. He sang once, because a mood struck him, or the wind was right, or the grapes had fermented just enough to cause divine confusion. And now he's just a legend. A living one, sure, one that still drools and steps on baskets, but a legend all the same. You stay with him a little longer that evening, watching as he rests his head on a log and snorts gently in his sleep. He's not waiting for another stage. He's not composing another tune. He's just resting, content in his brief moment of greatness. The morning after the official retirement, the square is quieter than usual. Not empty, never quite empty, but hushed in a way that feels respectful, like the village itself has collectively agreed not to press the issue. You pass by the temple, where the priest is carefully removing a decorative lyre that had been hastily nailed to the door in honor of Brontes. It's now cracked down the middle, probably symbolic. Telamon waves you over from a bench near the fountain. He's holding a clay cup of something warm, barley tea maybe, and wearing the same tunic from performance. Only now it's been patched in 3 places, and appears to have bramble seeds sewn into the hem. Souvenirs, he says when you point it out. Thought about taking him on a tour, he admits. Just the nearby villages. You know, one bray per town. You raise an eyebrow. But I didn't, he says, already answering the question. He's not a circus animal. And besides, he'd hate the travel. And the attention. And, honestly, everyone who isn't me. You look over at Brontes, who is standing at the edge of the olive grove like he's trying to commune with a distant, tastier branch. He's completely, blissfully unaware that a scroll poet from a coastal academy is sketching his profile with shaky hands and whispering. So noble, so aloof. Historians still argue, Telamon says, sipping his tea, whether animals were ever truly honored in Greek society or just used as symbols of gods, of vices, of simple rural humor. He squints at the donkey. Brontes might be all three. By midday, the visitors begin to arrive. Again, there's a woman from a fishing village who swears her cat can harmonize and wants Brontes to inspire it. A flute player brings a new composition titled Ode to the Bray That Brought the Rain, even though it hasn't rained in weeks. One man attempts to sell donkey-themed perfumes. He is escorted out gently but firmly. The merchant stalls are still hawking Brontes memorabilia. Figurines, lyres shaped like hooves. One suspicious item labeled Authentic Brontes Bray in a jar. It smells like old onions. Telamon just shakes his head. I suppose this is what happens when you have no theater and too many goats. That night, under the cool blue haze of an almost full moon, the village hosts one final feast in the donkey's honor. Not a performance. No stages. Just food, laughter, and increasingly strange toasts. To the donkey who reminded us to listen. To the donkey who sings better than my uncle. To the donkey who didn't even want this. You're sitting beside Telamon at the long table, watching as Brontes nudges a clay bowl off the edge with precision, honed through years of petty vengeance. Telamon leans toward you. I used to think joy came from being remembered, having a name carved into a wall somewhere, or a statue, or a plaque. You nod, chewing thoughtfully on a grape. But this, he says, gesturing at the lantern-lit square, this is better. You do something silly, something honest, and people laugh, and then they remember. He leans back. They might not remember me, of course, but they'll remember the sound of that bray. You smile, because he's right. You remember the moment, sunlight catching in the dust, villagers holding their breath, and that one perfect, imperfect note hanging in the air like something sacred and ridiculous all at once. Brontes, of course, chooses that exact moment to sneeze loudly into a basket of olives. The moment is broken, and yet somehow perfect again. There's an odd emptiness the next morning, as though the village itself is adjusting to post-legend life. The energy of the festival has faded into the dust, leaving only echoes behind. Half-sung bray imitations, forgotten garlands, and a lingering smell of roasted barley that refuses to leave your tunic. You find Telamon by the edge of the eastern path, packing a small cart with baskets, a folded rug, and a few lumpy wheels of cheese. He looks tired in a good way, like someone who has finally finished a very long and very silly poem. Brontes stands nearby, chewing meditatively on a rope that may or may not be part of the cart's harness. Going somewhere? You ask. Just away for a few days, Telamon replies. Let it all cool down. Maybe visit my cousin out near the coast. She owes me 3 eggs and 10 years of uninterrupted storytelling. You walk with him a while, along the dry road lined with olive trees and sleepy lizards. The sun's gentle this morning, more golden and hot, as if even it knows things need to slow down. I'm not abandoning the village, he adds, as if reading your thoughts. Just pressing pause. And then he says something strange. I think the donkey is done with me. You stop walking. What? Telamon shrugs, keeping his gaze on the horizon. He doesn't need me anymore. Or maybe I don't need him anymore. We had our moment. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. But we both know we can't repeat it. And try would just turn it into a routine. Ahead of you, Brontes begins to wander. tugging at the cart and stopping occasionally to snip particularly inspiring pebbles. There's something different in his gait. Not sadness, not hesitation, just independence. The kind that settles over a creature who's seen too many figs and heard too much applause to ever go back to being just livestock. That evening, Telamon decides to head back early. Coast can wait, he says. Turns out I don't like the idea of Brontes starting a cult without me. But when you return to the square, the donkey is gone. Not missing, not lost, just not here. You ask around. Some say he wandered toward the hills. Others claim he was seen drinking from the sacred spring up past the olive grove, staring deeply into the water like a mystic. A child insists Brontes was last spotted walking with a fox and a goose in what was definitely a magical trio. No one seems worried. No search parties form. Even Telamon, when you find him again, just nods slowly and says, "Good." He needed to go. You sit in silence together on the edge of the fountain. A few villagers are still selling donkey charms, but less enthusiastically now. One has pivoted to painted turnips. Another is trying to launch a rooster-based opera. You look up at the fading mural. Brontes painted in exaggerated glory, surrounded by musical notes and that ever so slightly wild glint in his eye. Historians still argue, Telamon murmurs, whether the departure of famous animals was documented because it mattered or because people couldn't handle the idea of them staying. You consider that. Brontes had no encore in him, no interest in cashing in. He simply left in the same quiet, surreal way he arrived. And honestly, that might be the most musical choice of all. Days turn to weeks, and Brontes does not return. His absence grows into a kind of presence, one of those strange rural silences that carries more weight than noise. People still talk about him, of course, but now in a way you talk about someone who might walk back in at any moment, just as you finally start to forget the exact sound of their footsteps. The village adjusts. The stalls go back to selling olives, cloth, and far less ambitious musical instruments. The mural fades a little in the sun. The Brontes hymn is sung only on weekends now, and mostly by a man who thinks it brings good crop weather. It doesn't, but no one tells him. Telamon, for his part, resumes his daily routines with admirable effort. He milks his goats. He repairs a stone wall that's been leaning since before the donkey's big day. He even starts writing a little, a scroll full of thoughts titled Bray and Let Bray, Reflections of a Very Tired Man. You help him organize his tiny home, and during the process, you come across a bundle of hay tied with a bit of red ribbon. Inside, tucked carefully between the stalks, is a cracked reed flute, the one Telamon used to rehearse with Brontes, the same one he never played well, but always carried. He catches you looking. Thought I might burn it, he says, or frame it. Haven't decided. He doesn't do either. Instead, he sets it beside the hearth. That evening, a wind rolls in from the hills. Dry, dusty, with a scent of time and possibility. You step outside to feel it, half expecting to see a pair of twitching ears appear over the ridge. But no, just wind. Historians still argue, Telamon muses later that night, whether the animal left on its own or whether the people imagined it did, to keep the story from becoming dull. You sip your tea and say nothing, because either way it worked. Brontes have become a myth in motion. Rumors begin to filter in from other towns. A donkey seen wandering through a vineyard in Delos. A strange bray echoing across a canyon near Corinth. A merchant swears he saw a donkey watching a puppet show in near total stillness, then vanishing as a crowd turned to clap. Of course, none of the sightings agree on details. Some say he wears a crown of ivy. Others say he pulls a cart full of lyres. One bard claims a donkey can speak now, but only in cryptic riddles, and only to people who have never seen snow. Telamon listens to these stories with a faint smile. Let them talk, he says. It's good for the soul and the economy. You realize then that he's not waiting. Not really. Brontes was never a pet, never a project. He was a comet, brief, unpredictable, possibly made of barley, and expecting him to return would be like expecting a thunderclap to apologize for being loud. Still, sometimes you both look toward the hills. just in case. And one evening, while lighting a lamp near the garden, Telamon pauses and says, "If he ever does come back, I hope he doesn't sing." You raise an eyebrow. "I hope he just walks in, knocks over a chair, and eats my laundry," he continues, "because that would mean he's still himself." You both laugh, and the lamp flickers gently in the breeze. The donkey may have left the village, but the village hasn't quite left him. His hoof prints have been worn into the stone stage. His name muttered into jokes, prayers, songs, and possibly 2 new baby goats. Both named Bron, because their owners argued over spelling. And every now and then, someone tries to replicate that bray. They never get it right. But oh, how they try. You wake one morning to the sound of music. Faint, lopsided, and unmistakably human. A boy is standing in the center of the square, tapping a reed pipe against his palm as he squints into the wind. He's trying to recreate the Brontes bray, note by note, with all the seriousness of a mathematician solving a sacred puzzle. It's terrible, but people gather. Telamon watches from the edge of the square, arms crossed, lips twitching toward a grin. He doesn't stop the boy, doesn't correct him, just watches. You sit beside him. "It's different now," he says. "Less spectacle, more memory." And he's right. The village doesn't expect Brontes to come back. Not really. They've accepted the legend, woven it into their lives, and let it mellow like old wine. The parrot has been relocated to a nearby shrine, where he performs impromptu sermons on musical integrity. The rooster, formerly bitter, now teaches vocal warm-ups to neighborhood children. And Telamon, well, he's begun writing poems again. Really writing. You read one, scratched on a wax tablet near the olive press. He brayed once. The wind caught it, and the world listened briefly. That was enough. Simple, honest, possibly plagiarized from one of Telamon's goats. Still, you get it. And as you sit there in the quiet that only follows truly strange stories, something begins to settle in you, a kind of restful absurdity, a peace that only comes after witnessing something both ridiculous and meaningful all at once. Brontes didn't win the festival because he was the best. He won because he tried. He stepped onto that makeshift stage, brayed his odd little heart out, and made an entire village believe that maybe, just maybe, music didn't have to make sense to matter. Historians still argue, Telamon says quietly, if donkeys really can sing or if it's just something we imagine in a dry season. You turn to him. Does it matter? He chuckles. No, it never did. The wind rustles through the olive trees, carry with the faintest sound of something. Maybe a distant bray. Maybe just a squeaky cartwheel. You don't chase it. You don't need to, because you were there. You heard the song, however imperfect, and you lived through the story, however brief. And that's enough. That night, the village sleeps soundly. The moon hangs heavy and golden. Cicadas sing their usual lullaby. Somewhere, a goat stumbles into a fruit basket, and a cat swats it for rhythm. And Telamon dreams of applause not for him, but for the sound he coaxed from a creature no one believed could sing. The legend of Brontes, the one-time bard of beasts, will live on, not carved in marble or recorded on scrolls, but told in sleepy whispers beside campfires at festivals, and in moments when the world feels too heavy for silence. And perhaps, somewhere in the hills, Brontes stands under the stars, eyes half closed, tail flicking at the moonlight, listening to the distant echoes of his own improbable melody. Because even donkeys in the right moment can become music. And now, let the story fade, slowly and gently, like a tune played one last time on a dusty instrument. Quiet, imperfect, and full of memory. The world you just wandered through, sun-baked stones, fig-sweet air, the sound of sandals on dry dirt. It's still there, somewhere behind your eyes. A place where brain becomes belief, and belief becomes legend. But for now, you can let it go. You've walked dusty roads. You've watched the village transform beneath a donkey's voice. You've seen joy take the shape of something silly, stubborn, and unexpectedly musical. So now, take a breath. Let it move through you slowly. The noise has passed. The laughter has dimmed. Even Telamon is quiet now, sleeping beside the hearth, dreaming of figs and flutes and a friend who left as suddenly as he arrived. There's nothing left to do, nothing to chase, just the softness of night and the comfort of knowing you were there, if only for a little while. Sink a little deeper now. Let your limbs grow heavy. Let the sound slip away, one by one. The story is over. The bray has echoed. The stars are waiting. Sleep well, traveler. You earned it.